The Red River Farm Network is celebrating the role of women in agriculture this month. Agircult-HER is made possible by the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council and more. Our guest here today is Anne Marie Ward, Minnesota Ag in the Classroom Foundation Executive Director. First of all, let's go ahead and get started. Just talk about your role in agriculture, what it is that you are involved in that space.
Thank you, Whitney. Well, with Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom Foundation, I feel like I have just this awesome opportunity to connect with professionals in the industry at multiple levels and with my amazing team, who is probably one of the most ag passionate groups I've ever met and certainly ever worked with directly. We work to provide professional development for classroom teachers. So our program, Minnesota Ag in the Classroom, is a public-private partnership with the Department of Agriculture. And so our memorandum of understanding is to go into schools K through 16, so colleges and universities that are preparing classroom teachers and our classroom teachers across Minnesota to teach them how to use our curriculum and our lessons and our activities and the experiences and opportunities that Minnesota Ag in the Classroom offers to share with their students in the classroom. Really, the mission is to infuse agriculture through K-12 education. So infuse agriculture and increase agricultural literacy. So it's been an amazing road since I joined the team in 2019. And prior to that, I was with University of Minnesota Extension in youth development, and I used the resources from Minnesota Ag in the Classroom to work with young adults, to work with kindergarten through 12th grade students, and to work with the rest of our volunteers within the 4-H program. And it was incredibly valuable, saw a lot of success, loved the whole, if you will, meat and potatoes of the program. And with Minnesota Ag in the Classroom, at present, we are influencing and impacting over 83% of Minnesota's public school districts, which is a super exciting statistic to be able to share with you. We're in every county in the state. That statistic, 83% of all Minnesota public school districts. We also work with private schools, home schools, a lot of colleges and universities, training those educators as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So obviously you have a passion for what you do and the agriculture industry as well. What is it that fuels that? I know your kids and things like that were really involved in 4-H and those types of things. So where does that passion come from?
Climbing trees and singing to cattle. Is that like too far back? Um, I didn't have a lot of neighbors close by, and we had cattle and trees and what my mom refers to as her river running through the back of our property, where you climbed up from the river, and there was our pasture and some corn, and some of our grazing section was a lot of trees, a lot of beautiful hardwood trees in central Michigan. And they were probably my best friends and playmates growing up from a very young age. There was occasionally a sheep, a couple of goats, lots of pigs, and chickens, of course. Chickens is another personal passion for me. So just growing up in that environment in central Michigan, and my mom's siblings had substantially larger operations. And so I got farmed out, if you will, to my aunts and uncles. And so I got to learn a lot of different things and a lot of different things within agriculture and how people run their operations differently. And also a neighborhood hog farm. Scraping sow crates was one of my least favorite summer jobs, but a whole lot of fun because of the people I worked with and how rewarding it was to go from farm to fork, if you will, like knowing exactly, how that all flowed. And my first career position out of college was actually working at the intermediate school district in vocational education. And again, learning basic life skills, helping other people find their passion, to find out if it's a trade school, a technical college, where to fill those gaps, and then progressing further and advancing my college degrees. Youth development. Youth development is always something I've been involved in, and I think one of my first, oh, I don't think I've shared this publicly. One of my first experiences when I moved to Minnesota was with going to the meat counter at the grocery store. I was in my mid-20s and I had never bought meat in a grocery store. My parents had 3 upright freezers, and we knew where all of our protein came from. And we had big gardens, and my aunt and uncles had big gardens, and we all swapped and traded. And the concept that people didn't know where their food came from seemed so foreign to me. So when I moved to northern Minnesota, when I moved to Bemidji, I shopped at a family-owned grocery store. And one of the first people I met, his name was Rich. He was the meat cutter. And I said, I need some help. Because what they were calling, cuts of meat, beef in particular in the store, wasn't what was in the big orange cookbook that I grew up utilizing. So cuts of meat have changed. Family sizes have changed. How rapidly we want to prepare a meal has changed. So from all that and through youth development, I spent over a decade with public television as the PBS lady. And then doors closed, windows open. So I went from a Department of Education grant to doing outreach with University of Minnesota Extension and 4-H. And when the window opened, or the door, if you will, and several people said, check out what's happening with Minnesota Ag in the classroom, I thought I'll take the leap. I loved my work in youth development with Extension. And yes, my kids were heavily involved, and we didn't have the space to do large animals like I did growing up, but a lot of chickens, a lot of pigs, a lot of turkeys, and always an interest in making sure that my kids knew where their food came from, and everybody else's kids as well. And I find through service we learn, and whether that's through work with the Elks Club or the Lions Club, I love my Lions members as well, or the Minnesota Cattlewomen and the Cattlemen's Association, circling yourself with people that have a lot of the same basic values and priorities really helps you further fan your passion and help to reach out. So it's kind of always been there. I have these fabulous pictures of my mom in the early 40s barefoot driving a drag with a team of horses in front of her. And my mom desperately wanted us to be able to know how to grow our food and where our food came from, and canning and freezing and turning everything from one dish to the next with things that you had right off your own property was really important to her. And she's been an inspiration my whole life. And at 85, she's going strong, and she's still a little picky about what she eats, but she eats everything.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question here. So your role models that have helped shape who you are and where you've gotten to, who are those people and who are those big influences for you?
Wow, that's a heavy question, Whitney. Talk about putting me kind of on the spot. Definitely my mom. First and foremost, I would say my mom and her siblings were all very different, very diverse, and the experiences, the opportunity, and the passion that they had for what they did on and off the farm, it allowed me to see that no matter how little the space you have or how large your farming operation might be, there's a place for everyone. There's a place for you to be involved and invested in agriculture. Going back to the 80s, I had a vocational education teacher named Carol Stark who was amazing at not just saying you can be anything you want to be, but you better have a foundation to figure it out. And that started with basic business and accounting. Also Cheryl Marshall, shout out to Mrs. Marshall. In understanding that there's a way to accomplish your goals if you surround yourself with good people and you learn those foundational things you need to learn. So doing research was something that's always been a big part of my life, whether my family, my teachers, several of my role models. Jean Castle in northern Minnesota in Beltrami County, she was an extension educator for years, and she came into my world actually through PBS. And I learned a lot more about her history with extension, which is deep and diverse. And just as I had those in my life that said, do the research and never say, I don't know. Say, I'll figure it out or I'll learn, get the answers to that. And I think that's important to teach young people and also to kind of keep as a model for yourself. Like, I'll figure it out. If you really want to know something, how to make something, how to do something, how to get somewhere, you take the time and the effort to figure it out and talk to people. Like, talking to people is really helpful. But with Jean Castle, one of the things she did when she was an extension educator is she was working with the 4-H youth when the beef program became open to girls. Because believe it or not, it wasn't always open to girls. And so when the boys in northern Minnesota started complaining, now the girls can do everything we can do within the 4-H program and they have the opportunity to go to state fairs, she said, well, then what haven't you been doing that the girls have been doing? And so she inspired a handful of young men in northern Minnesota to start sewing their own clothes. And talking to those young men who aren't so old now, aren't so young now, but some of them have become very dear friends of mine, and one of them being Carl Gilbertson, who's diversified from beef to goats. If you ever want to know about goats, talk to Carl. How that really changed his life as a young man, and seeing that just because somebody else is given an opportunity doesn't mean it takes an opportunity away from me. And to be able to articulate that as a teenage boy was something I don't think was easy for him or for Jean as his extension educator to get to that possibility, that plateau and change of mindset, if you will. It's those types of people that have really been inspiring to me, and not just what you want to accomplish for yourself, but most importantly, how you can help others grow and gain experiences and help them fan their passions. So whether it's a project area that you don't understand, whether it's, a new technology that we don't understand. I think all too often we tend to, if we don't understand something, become negative and cross our arms and say, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to learn. I don't want to know. Right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
artificial AI means a lot of things. And for my life, for a long time, it was artificial insemination. And now you got to be careful who you talk to when you say AI, because it means a whole nother scary thing, and that's technology driven. In I have a childhood friend who says whenever something new comes out from technology that he doesn't understand and it makes him scared, he just decides he's going to hug it until he figures it out. And I thought, that's so weird. That's so weird, right? But I think all of our lives and all parts of our lives are like that. Like, you have to get to know someone. You have to get to know something before you can really decide, is this a facet that I want to continue to incorporate into my life? Is it something I want to learn even more about? How does all that work? So there's been a lot of inspiring people for a lot of different ways, but I think the greatest inspiration has come from those that have helped to inspire others on a broad scale, and not just been like, I'm climbing the mountain by myself and this is where I want to be. It's that whole team approach. And from my vocational education teacher in high school and my accounting teachers, and then several throughout college experiences, and my mom and her siblings were just really amazing. And you get to today, and I look at some of the amazing women that I get to work with Minnesota Ag in the classroom. And, we have this term that we use in and out of agriculture called an influencer, right? A social media influencer, all those different facets. I look at some of those people and I think, wow, they make life look so good, right? When we're looking at social media. And then when you have the chance to get to know some of those people, and they're really as awesome as they look, that is what warms my heart when I'm like, you know what, because they don't just show you the good stuff. They show you the dirty stuff and the stuff breaking and, the kids crying and all the other things. And so getting a chance to get to know some of those influencers within agriculture that I feel like are really human people that you can call on and you can ask questions and you can feel like you're maybe not so alone, you're not so siloed. And all of our jobs have changed since the pandemic. Yours has changed, mine has changed, everybody we work with, how our students learn, how educators teach has changed. And I think that's a big factor of how we can continue to look at, we didn't just survive, we thrived. And with Minnesota Ag in the Classroom, cultivating experiences that aren't just an experience for a classroom, but an opportunity to do virtual field trips to an ethanol plant. You can't take a busload of kids there. To do a virtual experience or a virtual field trip, if you will, to a hog facility. You also can't do that with a busload of kids. But you can explain and use those moments as teachable moments to talk about biosecurity, zoonotic diseases. And all these ways of learning have changed as we've changed, and really realizing that we need to take our lessons in the world of agriculture right to the basics, like where does your food come from? Talking to somebody, meeting Rich the butcher, so I could figure out how to buy meat at a grocery store. Like, what's this, Look at that. I can vote and drive and all these things, but I don't know how to pick this out because I've not done this. And so if our students of today are going to be our voters of tomorrow, and hopefully our workforce within agriculture, because there's really a ton of jobs, we need to continue to work to inspire our classroom teachers and those around us to ask questions, not to say, I don't know, and accept that, right? So we've probably gone into the weeds in a couple of places here, Whitney, but people that have inspired me are people that, they take you along for the ride, and they bring a lot of other great facets and inspiration with them throughout many stages of your life. And one of my between Farm Bureau and Promotion Education Committee there, great people that are always wide-eyed and excited to learn and share. Love that with them. And the Minnesota Cattle Women, I feel like I'm getting my best life adult education when it comes to agriculture. The things you thought you knew, the things you want to know in a safe space with people that you can ask just about anything. That's inspiring. And I continue to be inspired. We're never too old to learn.
Absolutely. And, I feel like this entire time, this whole conversation that we've had so far is just little snippets of advice in themselves here. But what are some of the big pieces that if you're talking to someone who is maybe a little bit intimidated by the ag industry, I know you get the opportunity to talk to people that are new to it, probably more often than most anybody in your role and in the different things that you're involved in. What are some things that you encourage them with, pieces of advice?
Find out what they want to know, not what they don't know, because there's a ton of things we don't know. But find out what they're interested in. Maybe it's about cooking. Maybe it's about preparing food. Maybe it's a health and nutrition thing. Maybe it's political. Like they're so bent about something in agriculture because they read it in the news or they saw it on a social media post, to get them to be more curious, to ask those questions. And I also think it's really powerful to connect people. So that advice with, I won't eat that because of this. Oh, what's great is we all have choices. But did you know that? And then help them come to their own decision, come to their own conclusion. So really, we all need to keep learning, and we all need to keep educating. So I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of people, and being our role with Minnesota Ag in the Classroom is to train teachers, if educators don't know, how will their students know? So whether it's bringing video or real people to their classroom to learn about these vast careers, very diverse careers in agriculture throughout Minnesota and way beyond, whether it's that concept that engineering, wow, the tractor won't move without an engineer, just in case anybody wonders. There's so many facets of that. Technology and engineering are probably the two biggest fields within agriculture. Thinking that a career in agriculture requires a tractor, regardless of what color. We won't go there. or what kind of boots, hat, or tractor you have. None of that matters. And from the agronomist to the plant and soil scientist, like the science that's involved in just making things grow is amazing. Animal nutrition, human nutrition, building equipment, designing waterways. I mean, there's so much to it. So whether you're with one of the state or federal agencies within the alphabet soup, we love working with NRCS because we have so much to learn and share with them that it's just this amazing opportunity for us to ask them anything and then put it into a format for our students to learn, whether it's through our Ag Mag or some of our other resources. Um, Ask questions and then find out where somebody's push point might be. And usually when people don't understand, it's because they don't have enough information.
All right. So we've already touched on, your experience at the meat counter, your first time in your 20s. But what are some other just kind of anecdotes, memorable experiences being a woman involved in agriculture that really stick out to you or were big turning points?
Wow. There's a lot of funny. There's a lot of embarrassing. And there's some that are just really like, I guess probably because I grew up climbing trees and talking to cattle, I tend to narrate for them a lot. Um, you can only imagine, right? So having spent well over a decade attending a ton of livestock shows for every species possible and a few horse shows. Just, I did show horse growing up and then attended several events as well. Um, I think one of the really fun things is when we can bring our experience and more human nature into the world around you, especially when it has to do with livestock. I think that's just a personal passion point for me as well. So, um, going through the very first calving season with my partner and talking about my personal experiences with childbirth and infertility issues and all these different things and bringing in what I learned from the cattle women and having this man look at me and be like, oh, I just thought she was crabby. No, all these things are happening. And so, years later, we are still having those conversations and that opportunity to take your experiences in any aspect, whether it's accounting and putting together an annual report or all the different things you do, your experiences help you become better at it and more efficient, we all hope, in every facet of our life, right? But to be able to have some of those shared experiences with people and to continue to learn. So um, life just gets better and better. It's just harder to clear a fence now.
I like that. I might have to use that. Any final thoughts that you want to share about your experience in your professional life as a farmer rancher yourself um, before we let you go?
Okay, never underestimate the joys of raising chickens, A. And if you need some advice on some really friendly flocks to build, just reach out and ask me. I can help with that. Um, but also, you're never too old to learn. You're never too old to share. And if there's something you want to know, ask someone. Farmers, ranchers, anybody involved in agriculture. Having the chance to sit next to somebody who grows produce and help them they dissect your salad and tell you what all the stuff is in it is just amazing. So you take the most honorable and humble profession in the world and they don't share. So we need to be sharing. So ask a farmer, ask questions, and then make sure you share resources and experiences and opportunities with classroom teachers. So with Minnesota Ag in the Classroom, everything's free, easily accessible. We have a great team of resource specialists to support our educators across the state. And I would say the best thing we can do is share your work in agriculture and continue to ask questions about others and different facets of agriculture that maybe you're not familiar with.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm sure we could tell more chicken stories and ranching stories and farming stories here. But again, thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us here on the Red River Farm Network as we celebrate women in agriculture.
Thank you, Whitney, and we appreciate all you do.